Hello and welcome to the second edition of the ONG Strike Zone. Bryan Fulford, Kelvin Rozier, Kofi Hemingway, and we couldn't get too deep into this journey, fellas, without bringing in the Hall of Famer, the two-time Hall of Famer,
yes,
MEAC Hall of Famer, Florida A&M University Hall of Famer. He is Mr. Alvin Hollins. How's everybody doing?
How about Alvin?
Doing great. Doing great. Looking forward to the year. Looking forward to getting back on the field, seeing what these Rattlers will do in the SWIZAC. That's what we used to call it when I was in school at Southern, the SWIZAC. So
The SWIZAC.
yeah, that was way before Snoop was put his, we used to call it the SWIZAC. So
What so I mean, before we I know we're gonna get into talking about a little from MEAC memories. Obviously, you spent nearly 40 years as the SID for FAMU, and we were primarily in the MEAC those years. But when you think about FAMU joining the SWAC, just your initial thoughts on FAMU joining the SWAC. There's a lot of buzz. After me coming from Media Day, there's a lot of excitement in the air in that room. But just in general, what are your thoughts, Alvin?
well, I think it's a move that FAMU fans wanted to see happen probably 20, 30 years ago, because we have such strong ties to many of the schools in that conference. You start with the Southern series. Southern, that was the longest non-conference series from the mid-40s up until 2001, I think. We played every year, and that was longer than we have Grambling. If you look at the Orange Blossom Classic records, I think we probably played Grambling as much as anybody during those times. Then you got Alcorn. We had a few battles with them over the years, not as much. And of Jackson State, I think some of the more memorable FAMU versus SWAC games had to do with Jackson State. We had back-to-back, in 61, 62. Then, of course, that epic 1978 playoff game, So this game, this game, is going to be huge, not only because of, the Deion Sanders, but it's also, the return of the Orange Blossom Classic. So, which, many of those FAMU SWAC matchups took place. And, another team that FAMU had a kind of a long relationship with, Prairie View A&M. People kind of discount them now because of recent history. But, back in the 50s and the 60s, you could say they were the bomb. They were outstanding. HBCUs before integration, it was as intense and as any game you're going to see in the SEC today. In fact, that was the SEC, back in the day. As many brothers as playing for those SEC teams, that was the SEC, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So, it was a chance to renew those rivalries. And I think for FAMU, it really puts us back, football back, kind of center stage. I mean, nothing against the MEAC, but I think the SWAC, kind of twins in a way, because they both put a lot of premium on football. And football is the is the thing in the South. And that was the one thing about the MEAC. I think we never really fit in there because so many of their teams came from the CIAA, where basketball was kind of their big sport. You know, you look at the smaller facilities in football, with the exception of maybe A&T, South Carolina, and Norfolk for football. But then they got some pretty good. They have some pretty good basketball facilities. So clearly, we're in a league now that puts premium on the gridiron, and that's what our fans want to see. And of course, the bands as well. And that's another thing that you have in spades in the SWAC that you didn't necessarily have in the MEAC. The halftime, pregame, and post-game shows will be much anticipated.
Mm-hmm. Kofi, why don't you, we go around the horn, kind of this particular episode again, you know, we're going through just some MEAC memories with Alvin. I mean, there's pretty much, I don't, if I'm trying to do the math here, since, I don't know, Alvin, were you the SID when FAMU first joined the MEAC?
1980, yes.
Okay, so pretty much our history of, you know, that's why we wanted you in on this episode. So Kofi, why don't you get us going as we go around the horn, and then we'll kind of go, you know, we'll just kind of fire off some thoughts and questions with Alvin.
Yeah, what would you say, Alvin, was your favorite MEAC football memory? Top three.
Well, I go from favorite to top three. Well, I think when it comes to the MEAC, clearly those epic battles we had with South Carolina State, A&T kind of came on later in the game, but with South Carolina State, see, we had a history with them going back to the SIAC. But when it came to South Carolina State, you know, first with Willie Jeffries, who handed it off to Buddy Pugh, you know, because here's the thing, when he handed it off to Buddy Pugh in 2001, FAMU had only beaten them one time during that stretch after Pugh took over. I think, you know, until 19. You know, when you're off a year, you kind of forget, what did we do in 19? Yeah, we finally got rid of that ghost. But, you know, it had been that long, since 2000. I think who was it? Damian Fleming's, his freshman year, he went into Orangeburg and beat them. That was our only win since 2001 up until 19. So,
and they took that one away from us, I think, right?
Huh?
They took that one away from us, I think.
They can't take it away. What are you talking about? They can't take it away. We beat them on the field.
Bryan, we went in on the field, man. What you talking about?
I said they, the NCAA. Not the,
Ain't no they.
We don't know who they is. All we know is we got that.
We don't know who they is. Right.
So the NCAA is about to be passe now, so we might be able to get a lot of stuff back after they close up shop. We can go back in the archives and find a lot of wins in that place. But the South Carolina State series, I think the rivalry, and really that was the big rivalry, because there was a stretch there, you know, when you think about it, in the late 90s, early 2000s, when that was the game of the year in the conference, because these were the top two teams at that point. You know, I mean, Bethune, when they hired Bryan Jenkins, all of a sudden, you know, they kind of muscled their way into it. You had Joe Taylor, you know, no matter what he didn't like, or that he liked anyway, but, you know, there was always a lot of energy, you know, with the other teams, but primarily it was South Carolina State. You know, I think memory from a standpoint, maybe the most memorable game had to be, one of the most memorable games had to be that 6 or 7 overtime game we had against Hampton before they joined the MEAC up in the Circle City Classic. I think we won 59-58, and it was 20-20 at the end of regulation. So it just goes to show you how wild it got, you know, in the overtimes. But you know, and of course Hampton was the only team to beat us in the regular season in '98. Then we won 11 straight. We're #1 in the country in some polls, went to the playoffs, beat Troy in the first round, and got gypped out of a home game and had to go to Western Illinois, and really, you know, really should have pulled that one out too. One thing about when you talk about the memories, those are the years that FAMU made the playoffs, and under Billy Joe. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if we don't beat ourselves in some games, I think it's realistic to think we might have won a couple of national championships. I mean, I think we were that good. We were on a par with people in the association, so to speak. I still remember when you talk about memory, in 1999 when we went to Appalachian State, you know, we had lost to A&T a couple of weeks before. So halftime, we were up 20 points at App State, and the media, they're running over to me and Ken Riley going, "Who are you guys? Didn't y'all just lose to A&T a couple of weeks ago?" Yeah, but you know, we played our big rival the week before, and basically we had a letdown when we played A&T. But we ended up winning that game. I think it was 40. I think we ended up scoring 44 points in the game against Appalachian State. And after the game, the coach from Appalachian State, Jerry Moore, he's a legend. He said, he told the media, "Ladies and gentlemen, I just want y'all to know that is not the number 13 team in the country that we're playing, because we basically ran them out of their own stadium."
Yes.
You know, and that was, of course, that was the year that, you know, everything ended in Youngstown. You know, but I always tease the A&T fans. You know, "Hey, y'all lost to A&T. Y'all lost to Youngstown." I said, "Yeah, but if y'all had beaten them the week before in the quarterfinals, we would have met in the semifinals in Tallahassee. So, you know, y'all beat us in Greensboro, but the rematch for the national for a shot at the championship would have been in Tallahassee. And I guarantee you, the outcome would have been a whole lot different. But hey, what can you say? You know, but you know, we had an opportunity to play go up against some outstanding coaches. Joe Taylor, who's in the College Hall of Fame. In fact, you know, you think about when we started out in '80, you know, it was Rudy Hubbard, you know, against Willie Jeffries. Jeffries left.
Bill Davis.
It was Bill Davis. You're right. It was Bill Davis, because Jeffries left prior to that to go to Wichita State. So, I mean, of course we did face him later on at Howard, and then when he returned to South Carolina. But there, you know, there were some outstanding coaches that we matched wits against over the years, and you know, we had some, you know, great coaches. Matter of fact, three of the guys that coached us during those years, you know, Rudy Hubbard, Taylor, and Billy Joe, they are all in the College Football Hall of Fame, along with Jay Gaither. So that makes FAMU very unique in that we have 4 College Hall of Fame coaches. So that's nothing to sneeze at.
Good point. Kelvin, what do you got?
So, Alvin, I was fortunate enough to be around when you got your Hall of Fame jackets, one with the MEAC and, of course, the FAMU. And I'd like for you to discuss 2 things. I'm going to throw 2 things at you. First, tell me, you know, now that you retired and you had time to reflect a little bit, what those, you know, your 40-year career at FAMU and those, and the recognition, what that means to you. And then I want you to kind of talk about those early years in the MEAC, because I know you was around. I want you to tell everybody when you started at FAMU, and then those early years, why we joined the MEAC, and then what happened the first time we left the MEAC.
Well, the recognition you know, in both cases, I was surprised here in 2005 when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Matter of fact, Earl Holmes and I went in the same year. Of course, he was still playing, so his brother stood in for him. But it was a surprise. I think Bobby Lang and some other folks actually nominated me for it. So, you know, I was grateful. You know, I just didn't expect, you know, especially you still working. You figure, you know, once you leave, maybe, but to still be in the saddle, so to speak, and, you know, to get to walk down the red carpet. And it was in the Civic Center then, but, you know, that was very, very special. And then the MEAC, that was a total surprise because, you know, I had come back to work at FAMU, and I think Vaughn Wilson and some other folks, you know, put me up for it, you know, and, you know, that was pretty special. The thing about it is, you know, I enjoyed doing that work. You know, I mean, I wasn't a big, you know, I wasn't a guy that sought a lot of attention. I liked working, you know, behind the scenes, you know, and putting the coaches and the players and folks out front because that's the job, you know, you to promote, you know, the program. So, you know, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But working with the coaches and with the athletes, you know, that was rewarding. And especially when you're going into the Hall of Fame at FAMU, and some of the former athletes are folks that you work with. That's when you know you've been around a long time. And they all, you know, were very appreciative of the efforts that I made for them on their behalf when they were playing and for their teams. You know, so you realize that even though I wanted to try to stay kind of in the background, you know, you really don't stay in the background because people see your publications, they see the stuff that you write and whatever, and they get a chance to rub elbows with you, and they know, you know, the passion you have for it. And if you've been around a long time, they say, you know, this cat might actually know something. So, you know, it's you know, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, because being at Florida A&M is one of those places that, you know, you look at the great traditions, the great athletes and teams. You know, I've always said it's probably, if you just take all of our accomplishments as a program, shoot, I think I might stack it up against Alabama or anybody else. I mean, especially when you look at the caliber of folks that have come through FAMU, and especially when you also look at the fact that we didn't have nearly the resources financially or anything. You know, Gaither and those guys, everybody, oh, they were great. They had all that talent. I said, yeah, that's true. But they didn't have the same budget as Florida State or Miami or Florida or Alabama. But you look at what they were able to accomplish. And I think, but that's the HBCU brand. You know, I guess you say you overachieve, you know. So being a part of that, you know, rubbing elbows with coaches like Riley, you know, which I hope someday, you know, his family at least will be able to see his name immortalized in a Pro Football Hall of Fame. Riley, you know, Billy Joe, just so many. You know, no matter who the coach was, you know, or administrator was, I really took a lot of pains to, you know, to be able to work with folks because, hey, you know, it's, you know, hey, we all working for the same goal. You know, that was to make, you know, FAMU, oh Lord, I don't want to say this now, FAMU great again, but yes. And I'm not a Trump person, by the way, so definitely don't want to be identified with him right now because there'll be a knock on my door and you might see me disappear off the screen. You joker. But as far as and you were asking me about
when you started and
when I started and everything. Well, when I came from Southern University. Came from Southern University. I was 23, 24 years old. I've been an assistant director there for about, well, really all my college years, really. I started out at the lab school, which is the high school, like FAMU DRS. You know, I was a stat person. I wrote up stories for the papers. So then when I got to the university, you know, you just kind of grew into it as the assistant. And then I got the opportunity, met Hansel Tooks, the AD in 78. And 79 spring, he called and said, hey, man, I got a position open. Would you like to come down? And I said, yeah. And then, so I came down and I stayed. You know, it was just a good situation. Roosevelt Wilson, Vaughn Wilson's father, he was the SID, and he was actually moving into another position at the university. So, but we had known each other because we used to play Southern. Southern used to play FAMU every year. So you sort of knew people already. And but those early years, it was interesting. I say, when I look back now and you see where everything's so technical with the computer statistics and internet and social media and things like that. And back in the day, you know, you basically, you use that telephone, you used mail, used to mail out releases, you mail out stats, you just did statistics by hand, which is what I did when I was in high school and in college. So it was a natural thing, but making that transition, you know, fax machines to email and all of that, you know, all that stuff came, you know, it came gradual, but that was the challenge, was just trying to, you know, promote your athletes, you know, and keep, you know, and do it in a way that, you know, they were able to make All-American. And I think we did a pretty good job. And of course, like I told Billy Joe, the key thing is, you know, if I'm telling lies from Sunday to Saturday, telling lies from Sunday to Friday, you guys get out there and make it happen, you know, then, you know, I'm not a liar because you guys back me up on Saturday. And they pretty often did. I mean, we had some outstanding players, and man, so many of those guys now. And then even during that time, when I first got there in 1979, 80, fall of 79, our women's program was just starting too. Mickey Clayton was our women's coach in basketball. And I think Veronica Wiggins, who recently retired as softball coach, I think she was actually in school, in grad school at that time. Then she went on to Miami. Then she came back to work with the program when we decided to transition to fast pitch. There's just so much in the way of history, you know, those 40 years. And then
what about those press passes though? Those press passes in homecoming, you gonna miss that?
Man, I don't miss any of that stuff. I don't, you know, there's certain parts of the game or certain parts of the job that you really enjoy, you know, get preparing for the game, getting the press box ready, and then, you know, hoping that the team wins, because either way, you're gonna have to work 3 hours after the game, but it's always goes a lot better when you win. But some parts of the job, like dealing with credentials and dealing with people trying to, you know, shuck and jive you to get a credential, that kind of stuff I won't miss. I'm already gotten a few phone calls on my cell from some of my rowdy friends from Sunday, Saturday afternoon, going, "Hey man, don't forget about me this year." I said, "What do you mean don't forget about you? I don't work at FAMU anymore." "What? No, man. Well, who gonna hook me up?"
Did he get the memo?
I said, I don't know who gonna hook you up. I'm looking for the hook up myself now. So they said, once I find out, I'll let you know. How about that? You know, so man, over the years, you believe it or not, over the years, I actually been threatened over credentials. Had my job threatened by serious, man. A guy said, "Man, I'll call the president on you if I don't get my credentials." And I'm sitting there going, I do not believe this. But then I said, well, welcome to the club, baby. What are you gonna do? So I mean, the whole experience. I mean, you experience just about anything and everything, really, you know. And I wouldn't trade those years, I don't think, for anything.
What do you? One of the things that I know Kelvin mentioned, and it had me, and we kind of talked about this on our last show. This is now with FAMU leaving the SWAC. This is the third time that we have left the MEAC. What can you tell us about those first two instances? Obviously, one that Kelvin mentioned in the what was that, the 79, 80? What we that was
that was 80,
actually
83, 84.
84, and then of course we had the 2000 whatever year that was for
that's what I call the FBS fiasco in 03 and 04, like it was like I was in the war or some 03, 04.
Yeah,
you know,
give us something behind the scenes.
Go back to the original.
Yeah,
the original fallout. And the funny thing is, the fallout was really, it kind of showed how much people really had that sneaking love for the Rattlers, because the 5 years of the Florida Classic contract, which went from 78 to 82, had run out. So, which we're going to play in Tampa every year. So, you know, we had just expanded Bragg, just remodeled it, and we had plans to take Bragg up to 55,000 over time. So the idea was, if we could get that game here every other year, you know, you bring that money to the city and the county and all that stuff, you know, you could probably leverage that and them, you know, helping you secure more funding to grow the stadium. Plus, it would give our fans some incentive to actually buy season tickets, because if you remember, most of you all remember, FAMU was like, we were the bingo long traveling all-stars of black college football, because we played all over the country. We played 7 road games a year, you know, and 4 of those road games were in Florida: Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, that kind of thing. So, you know, we never really, other than a few diehard, we never really made real inroads into selling season tickets. But anyway, for that particular game, that particular situation, Bethune, and this is the backstory on that, Bethune-Cookman in 1978 their athletic program was in dire straits financially. And the Methodist Church basically told them that if they didn't figure out a way to secure more funding, that it would no longer fund the athletic side of their budget. So Dr. Oswald P. Brunson got together with Dr. Walter Smith, and they came up with the idea of playing, you know, the annual game in Tampa. And this is the deal: we were going to split the revenue 50-50. We would basically manage the game for them and give them half of the revenue, which was something that some of us didn't like too much, especially Rudy Hubbard. He's like, man, I just won a national championship, and I want to build my program, brother. You know, so it turned out. So when we got to the spring of '83, we're trying to work out, okay, finalize the schedule, where we're gonna play. But Bethune wanted to continue to play in Tampa, because see, the deal was good for them. They were a small school. They didn't have staff. They couldn't really run a game that size. We could. I mean, we told them, look, we got a 25,000 seat stadium. We can guarantee you the money at that time, we weren't drawing 50,000 like we do in Orlando. So we could guarantee them the years the game was in Tallahassee, the same money they would get wherever they wanted to play when they were the home team. We were basically saying, let's go back to home and home. So we were not opposed to playing. We just didn't want to go back to that neutral site every year, which meant that we were doing most of the work. But anyway, they didn't like the idea. We kind of hit what they call it, you know, an impasse. They went to the conference and they pled the case that, man, FAMU trying to kick us out of Tampa. And we said, no, we're not trying to kick you out of Tampa. It's just that when it's our home game, we want to play in Tallahassee. You can play it in Tampa when you're the home team. That didn't work, because they wanted that half of the gate without working for it. So that's the way I saw it. So they went to the conference, and they laid it on thick, I guess. And like I said, there were people that obviously didn't like FAMU. So the league said none of your sports will be eligible for any championships in 83, 84. And we're like, well, damn, we want to play the game. We just don't want to play it where they want to play it. What's the problem? Well, none of your sports are going to be eligible. So, okay, well, fine. We'll take our ball and go home. That's what we did. We left the conference. So we were independent until 87, 88. We rejoined in 87, 88. 88 was our first year back in football. We played some other sports like baseball. I think we won baseball championship in 87. So, and our women joined another conference for a number of years. So but that was the heart of that. And of course, that was at that same time as another little backdrop. This was 83. This was if you recall, we stopped playing Tennessee State. We stopped playing Tennessee State because, for the.
It was cheating.
Huh?
It was cheating.
Cheating, yeah. Yeah, we will never forget 1978, where we had a chance to win that game and keep our winning streak going. And we got mysterious holding penalties on the final drive that cost us the game. We had a 17-game winning streak, the longest in the country. But anyway, so of course we went on to win 12 straight after that. So, but that's the weird part, that we stopped playing them because of that. Plus, we knew they were playing people under assumed names, which a lot of the brothers were doing that. But Tennessee State made a cottage industry out of doing things, bending the rules.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild, man. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why they're in the Ohio Valley, because they had become so outlaw and renegade that, everybody knew about it. The NCAA, they were number one in the country one year. They were ready to be the top seed in the playoffs. And that's not 99. This was prior to that, when Bill, I think there was a guy from Jacksonville who was the head coach there. But anyway, they had to declare like 12 or 15 of their kids ineligible because they didn't have the grades. And here you are, no one team in the country, and based on ranking, they were undefeated. But when they reviewed their records, those guys didn't have the grades, and they told the coach, hey, you had to be aware of it. So it turned out it kind of justified some of the things we were saying, but our fans really didn't care. And of course, when Dr. Humphreys became to become president in 85, that was one of the two main things he did when we were talking about Dr. Humphreys. Two of the main things he did for athletics was restore the Florida Classic and the Tennessee State Series, because we had stopped playing both of them in 83. So when he came on board, he got a mandate from the alumni. We got to have the Classic back. We got to have Tennessee State back. Even though Tennessee State actually owns a winning record against us, the thing about FAMU was that and we were talking about some of the other teams like Jackson State, Grambling, and Southern, the games that our fans liked to see were against the better teams, even if we lost. Because 9 times out of 10, you're gonna kill Fort Valley or Albany, or even some years we used to kill South Carolina State. I think we scored 80 on them one year. But it's just the idea that there were certain teams, Tennessee, Grambling, Southern, that were going to give us. It was going to be a 4-quarter game, and people wanted to see a good football game. So So that's why they wanted this, and they had the Aristocrata bands. They're a pretty good band too. So, see, for the fans wanted to see these games. They didn't care about, the cheating and all that stuff that was going on. Shoot, they were there to be entertained. That's what they wanted. So that when you talk about some of the contributions he made to athletics, those were two he made coming into the door in '85, was reestablishing those two rivalries with Tennessee State and with Bethune.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's mymajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
Quick, I did want to ask this question because the same thing that affected the Florida Classic, or the same conversation that affected the Florida Classic, is the same kind of conversation that Jackson State and Alcorn ended up having about the Capital City Classic, and Alcorn was able to get their home game in Lorman against Jackson State officially. So it's interesting to see if that conversation ever comes up. Do you see the day when FAMU would host the Florida Classic back in Tallahassee?
Well, it's interesting. Southern and Grambling used to play. They used to open the season like Prairie View and Texas Southern do now. They used to open the season, then they moved it to the end of the year. And some people said that was one of the reasons Grambling had to. That's why the series turned toward Grambling because they got better as the season went along, whereas Southern, got beat up during the year, whatever the case may be. But in fact, they had actually talked about playing that game in Baton Rouge during their spring season, but I think they ended up playing it in Shreveport. But I don't know. I mean, some people still play those rivalries on campus, with a few exceptions. I don't think because we don't have a facility. And if we had been able to follow through on our ultimate dream of a 45 or 50,000 seat Bragg Stadium, I think we could have done it. See, because you look at Alabama, you look at Auburn, you look at schools like that, Ohio State, Michigan. They play at home every other year. Now, Florida and Georgia is a little different because it's a neutral site, which is probably a good thing, but they've got the facilities to handle it if they decided they wanted to go home and home. Some people like the neutral site because it, I don't know if it's less work, but you don't have to worry about, you can split the parking and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with us, I just think our fans like the idea of being able to travel and staying in the hotels and enjoying all the other festivities. So, I mean, I think we've gotten our folks hooked on classics in that sense. So I don't know if it'll ever go back. The one advantage when you look at the schools like Alabama and Auburn or Ohio State, Michigan, they put it in their season ticket package. So what happens is the year that game is, let's say, for example, Florida State and Florida. The year that game's in Gainesville, if you're a season ticket holder at Florida State, you better be on that season ticket list in 2021, because when 2022 comes around, you won't be able to get your same seat for that Florida game. See, so that's how these schools, a lot of these schools built up, their war chest by bringing these big games every other year, and then you get on that waiting list for tickets and whatnot. I mean, some of these places, they're so huge, some of those games are so huge, like if Alabama's at Auburn, there's 30, 40,000 people at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa watching the game on the big screen. So, I mean, that's just, but, that's, like I said, that's a different level. But the idea is you get people, you get people used to buying season tickets. And that's what I was saying earlier with us traveling so much, people knew around the state, Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami, hey, we're going to get to see the band. We're going to get to see the football team. So I don't need to buy season tickets. I just need to figure out when homecoming is or when it's a classic. So that was the difference. That's what we were hoping to move away from when we expanded Bragg. But, things just kind of got, sideswiped really. And we never realized that dream. Because I really believe at that time, I think in the back of Rudy Hubbard's mind, probably Roosevelt Wilson's mind, that they were, the 1A move that was the other reason we left in 02, 03, and 04. I think that was a germ that was taking root in their mind then, because, we started scheduling, non-traditional HBCU, Rhode Island, Eastern Kentucky. You think about the teams we played, like Georgia Southern. So Murray State. So we were trying to expand our wings, so that we could prepare ourselves for this. But, once things change and, we never followed through on it. So we could either say a dream deferred, maybe, I don't know, but we never really explored the potential of that. So
did FAMU rush that decision back in 03, 04? Was it a rush decision? Why was it a rush decision? and what could have been done differently, and maybe, I don't know, saved that dream?
Well, the thing about it, I don't think the idea was a bad one, because I think FAMU had that type of brand that, if done right, we could be. I mean, what's really ironic is you look at what they call a group of 5 teams. Look at Georgia Southern. Look at Appalachian State. Look at Troy. These are teams we played and beat. These are teams we played and beat in the playoffs. I mean, dang, Georgia Southern, we had a nice little rivalry going with them. I mean, we beat them at least 3 times, but the games were very competitive, and it's just, you start thinking, well, dang, what did they do differently? Well, I mean, obviously they raised the money, but the big advantage they had, even Troy, which was when we played them in '99, that was their last year in 1AA then. It's now FCS. But schools were given a 5-year run-up to getting in. And they got to that 5th year and they realized they didn't have the means, the money, or whatever, then they could stay in FCS. That they would hold their application until they were ready, or they say, hey man, we can't hang. But what happened during that time, right after that, I think the bigger schools saw people trying to jump up, and they were worried about people, trying to cut into their cut, so to speak. So they influenced the NCAA to make, if you approve them initially, you make them immediately 1A. So in other words, with Troy and South Florida and UCF, they still were able to. They were transitional. They were still able to play FCS schedule, for 5 years. When FAMU applied and was initially approved, we were automatically 1A. So just like we were talking about Willie Simmons, you talk about how many times we missed out on him. See, this is the 3rd time. The 3rd time was a charm, because we had him coming in as a transfer in '03. We were practicing with him. We were getting ready to start that season. And of course, then when NCAA said, okay, you guys are approved, all those transfers, and I think there might have been about 12 or 15 of those guys, maybe more, all those guys became ineligible because they were transferring from one 1A program to another. But now, today, guys can transfer. They got a one-time transfer rule. That's why Reggie Bush, it was funny listening to him today. That's why Reggie Bush was saying, well, dang, they're paying guys now and all this stuff. I should be able to get my Heisman back. Because when you think about what the rules used to be, I mean, just think if we had Willie Simmons able to play for us that year, transitioning into 1A. He would have only played that 1 year, but we had some transfers that would have had extra, additional years. Plus, with Coach Billy Joe said, hey, I was able to talk to kids that were 1A caliber into coming to FAMU. So the recruiting was going to be of a different level. So all of that went out of the window. And of course, then, they found out about, the rules violations. But essentially, like you said, the rushing, we didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have we didn't have sufficient staff. I mean, right now, I think FAMU, I saw where they hired 3 people for athletic communications. I said, wow, when I started in '79, it was just me. I think we eventually hired Herb Reinhardt to handle women's sports, but we never had more than 2 full-time people. And there were some years when it was just me, myself, and I, but that's the way it is with most HBCUs. We don't value that area at all. And after all these, with all of the, the advances with technology and everything else. So you're still shortchanging it, yet you're paying football coaches $300,000 and ADs $200,000, and you can't find money for a second assistant or even a grad assistant for sports information to deal with 15 or 16 sports. So, go figure. So after that 2003 season, which basically, all of our games, even the conference games didn't count. The next year we played Illinois, Tulane, Virginia Tech, and we're actually competitive against a lot of those teams, believe it or not. I mean, yeah, we lost, we're 3-8, but shoot, we weren't, with the exception of Virginia, probably Virginia Tech, and maybe Temple. We were in a lot of those games, at least into the maybe middle of the third quarter or whatever. We weren't totally embarrassed. So you figure, hey, if you had a couple more pieces, we might have been right in there. So, I mean, you could see the potential for us if we could have stayed the course. The problem was we didn't do a feasibility study. It was rushed, by members of the board. They wanted to get in there. They thought, they had this television deal with Urban Broadcasting, which went, up in smoke, so to speak. So I don't think the announcers ever got paid or anything like that. So there were a lot of things that I think were almost done. I don't know. It was almost a front for stuff that shouldn't, kind of shady stuff. But in the end of the day, it hurt us because the potential was there. And I think right now in 2021, when people in Texas are mad, people in Texas A&M are mad because University of Texas wants to join the SEC, and folks in Oklahoma mad because Oklahoma wants to join the SEC and leave Oklahoma State behind. There were folks here in Florida that felt that University of Florida and Florida State did not want to see FAMU go 1A. Now I'm sure they didn't, especially at Florida State. You would have my way now. So at the end, there are always a conspiracy theories that they may have done some things to grease the skids. But bottom line is we didn't do a feasibility study. We didn't raise the money. That was the one thing that, say for example, South Florida. When South Florida even decided to start football, their president said, look, you're going to have to raise X number of dollars before you can pick up a football. So that's when they hired Leroy in Oklahoma, America. He was a big banker in Tampa, and they raised money needed to start that program. So, you just got to do your homework. You got to lay your groundwork. We were already established as a what you call it. We had a brand name. We won a national championship. I mean, Gaither, Althea Gibson, Bob Hayes. You think about the names that roll off your tongue. This athletic program to hold its own with a lot of people, but we needed to have a little bit more in the way of financing to be able to make it. You had to add more staff, and scholarships, more coaches, that type of thing. And of course, you're going to have to carry the rest of the athletic program with you. We were already Division I, so that wasn't going to be a big change. It was going to end up being what conference you were going to be in for those other sports. And the MEAC, and that was the other part of that, leaving the league. We wanted to get out. We wanted to leave our other sports in the MEAC. And the MEAC said, no way, if y'all sit there and start making all that 1A money, that's going to filter down to the other sports and going to put, it's almost like, it was going to put everybody else at a disadvantage. That's what they felt like. And they probably would have been right, So but by that time, the sentiment, the worm had turned here. The AD got forced out. Dr. Lee, Robert J.R.E. Lee III, he got forced out. And other changes happened with the board. So basically, we pulled the plug on it, which was sad because Billy Joe had begun to recruit. 1A players. In fact, the day of signing day is when we pulled the plug.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, you know, there's some history when you think about it, you start going, what are we doing, man? I mean, obviously, we weren't going to be in a position to sustain that thing without the money. And then, of course, that's when we had the 200 violations and all of that. So there were a lot of dark clouds over the program. So it was going to be tough to keep that going, you know. And I think when you start talking about the impact of a Dr. Fred Humphreys, I don't think that whole fiasco would have happened if he had been president. I mean, he was a man who had, you know, brought Tennessee State back from the dead and helped them keep their identity before he came to FAMU. So he'd already fought the dragons of state educators, you know, in Tennessee. So he was more than ready to be our white knight here in Tallahassee. It's just that when he ran against Jeb Bush, they said, okay, we got to figure out a way to neutralize this brother. And that's, you know, so they did some things, and, you know, he basically had to leave after 16 years. But you look at the 16 years he was president from 85 till 2002, that was probably the second, maybe the most successful run of athletic success that we had, even over what we had with during the Gaither era. You know, I mean, you'd be matching them up. You know, we won over 90 conference championships. Believe it or not, volleyball won like 10 straight championships. Softball was destroying people, you know, and going to the playoffs. You know, you had basketball in 1999. The men and women won the MEAC tournament same year. You know, football, of course, went to the playoffs 7 years in a row. You know, baseball won. I think we won 6 of our championships in an 8-year period during that time. So, and track was almost untouchable.
And tennis.
Right. And tennis. That's right. You're right. Matter of fact, it's amazing when you look at the success of the athletic program, you know, during his tenure. Dr. Humphreys loved athletics. He supported it. If we needed out-of-state waivers, we needed any additional funding, he would help. If there were kids who needed assistance of any kind, as far as, you know, a lot of times you have kids who come from tough backgrounds, or they just need some compassion and some help. And he loved his students. So he didn't mind, and he loved the athletes. When we would bring recruits in, he would come and meet them. I don't know how many. You can go to Alabama and some of these other places. I don't know how many of those guys ever get to meet the president. Maybe never. Maybe never during the time they even playing. But Dr. Humphreys was a hands-on type of CEO, and he knew the game. He knew who his kids were and his coaches. So, you know, he loved his teams, and he wanted them to be successful. You know, so he hired Ken Riley when he first got here, you know, because he was the popular choice. Rudy Hubbard obviously had fallen out of favor. And then after about 7 or 8 years, you know, we were kind of middle of the road. We weren't really realizing that dream. So he said, okay, well, now Riley was a popular choice for you guys. He said, now I'm going to go out and pick a coach. So he picked Billy Joe, who was doing, you know, marvelous things up at Central State. And, you know, most people didn't think HBCUs could win more than 7 or 8 games in a season anymore. But Billy Joe, that was part of his contract. If he won 9 or more games, he was going to get a raise. And after about 4 or 5 years, he said, I went to the president's office. I thought I was going to get a raise. They had to readjust my contract. I was doing too good a job. I said, well, coach, hey, at least they didn't fire. How about that? You know, but Billy was a guy that he wanted somebody dynamic, somebody to lead that football program. That's because he really believed that if he got that football program going, that was going to help recruiting students. It was going to help raise money from the alumni, keep them happy. And, you know, he accomplished both of those goals, you know. So, you know, we had a great run of success in all the different sports during that time, because that was the kind of, you know, attention to detail he paid when it came to athletics. So,
Kelvin, any final thoughts or questions that you want to run by Alvin while we got him before we put up? I feel like we could have like a 5-part series talking with Alvin on this. So we may have. I mean, there's so many more questions that I know I have, but I'm like, we may have to do like a special segment in a couple of weeks more with Alvin Hollins. You know, but anyway, Kelvin,
I'd be open to it. I mean, shoot, I'm sure I have a few more stories here.
Oh, I bet you do. I bet you do. There's all kinds of stuff out there that I know I want to ask, but I know we only got so much time. So, Kelvin, give you a final thought, question, or anything you want to run by Alvin.
I've had the pleasure of knowing Alvin for a long time, and I actually worked with him as a colleague too. And so I've heard some of these stories. I know he has many, many more. But I want to take my time right now to thank him for his 40+ year service to FAMU, and I know how hard he worked. And when he talking about being a one-man band and him and Bryan, I've seen him at 1 and 2 in the morning before a game and doing Olympic sport along with football and doing those 24-hour games and setting up, and I saw some of them beat downs he took with some of those folks who wanted credentials and on game day want to be VIPs and so forth. And he, you know, one thing I would say about Alvin, I don't know, did he love it and he worked hard, but he always kept his cool. I mean, you never saw him. You saw him balanced all the time, right? You know, he treated everybody the same, respectful and professional. And with limited resources and support. So Alvin, I just want to thank you, man. You've been a gem for my alma mater in this university. You've been a loyal worker and administrator, man, and I appreciate you, man, and I love you.
Thank you so much. Almost in tears now after that, you know. But yeah, but I mean, I really love what I was doing, and when you talk about how you deal with people, you know, we're in a people business, you know. I mean, whether we like it or not, and you know, you hear about some of the things that are going on or that have gone on over the years, and it always, and then invariably people will say, "Man, Alvin always treated people." I said, "Well, that's what you're supposed to do, man. I mean, to me, because you're gonna need help down the road, and not only that, I mean, you know, if the situation was reversed, that's how I'd like to be treated. And you know, you can't always give people what they want, but I think if you handle it a certain way, you know, you can kind of ease the blow a little bit. So, you know, so I think it's, you know, you just the golden rule, man. Treat people like you want to be treated.
Amen.
Man.
Yeah.
Amen. Kofi, your words.
Wow, I have so much because I think I met Alvin Hollins way back in 1982 as a little boy, because my dad was the faculty representative for athletics. And so I would spend a lot of time trying to get media guys and just popping into the office from time to time. And he would take time out to have discussions with me, and I really appreciated all of that stuff. And then once I got to college and had an opportunity to assist Dexter and the department in some ways, man, it's really, really meaningful. And then even doing the whole Voice of Bragg episode and everything with him, that was very, very powerful. He's just a great guy from top to bottom. And what I always would joke with him about is when I would come into the office, or anytime you enter into that sports information office, the door opens and his head would turn to the side, and that left eyebrow would raise up a little bit. He would see who it was before he would poke up behind that laptop and say what he got to say. But Alvin is just world-class, a world-class human being, a world-class person, world-class administrator, world-class SID, legendary, in fact. I was going to say, at that time when they were hiring Ken Riley, both Billy Joe and Bill Hayes were up for the job as well. And Joe Taylor was also up for that job at FAMU. It was interesting because Billy Joe, my dad was like, we need to hire Billy Joe right now. That's need to be our coach. And I was like, well, who in the world is Billy Joe? We need to, Ken Riley's up there with the Green Bay Packers. He's like, listen, we need to hire Billy Joe. So let me say this. If we retrospect, because Marvel Comics has this whole thing right now with variants and time travel and all this other stuff, we were able to go back and hire Billy Joe during that time in 85, 86. Do you think FAMU would have won a national title?
Certainly, I think so. Because for one thing about Billy, because if you think about what he did at Central, won 2 NAIA titles, played in 3 other national championship games. In fact, I think his playoff record as a coach, I think his second year at Central, he took them to the NCAA Division II national championship. He believed in the playoffs. I mean, it was nothing for him. He had a whole set of plays just for postseason. He had a whole set of plays just for overtime. In fact, that game I talked about where we went 6 or 7 overtimes against Hampton, he said he was just about to leave his office and something told him to pick up his overtime chart. He had it all laminated. Something told, because obviously it was 20-20, ended up 59-58. So he said, should have. I said, Coach, you should have used that during the game. We wouldn't have gone to overtime. You scored 39 points with nothing on the clock. I said, gee, but anyway, he was fantastic. And I think we would have won a national championship. Like I said, we came real close, I believe, especially 97, 98, 99. Those teams could have won it. I think that Quinn Gray's senior year, that club could have won it as well. I mean, it's just that he just, for one thing, he had no fear. See, I think that's the one thing about most HBCUs. When they get to that, on that stage, I don't think they have it. I think they lose confidence, but not with him. I mean, he'd been there before. I mean, the guy had been in the playoffs. He played in bowl games, coached. So, I mean, I think his whole demeanor was perfect. He knew the game inside and out. And I knew we had hired somebody special when I got a call from a sports director in Cincinnati. He was an old white guy. He said, y'all got a good one there. Alvin, y'all got a good coach there. He said, I really thought he could be the head coach of the Bengals. That's just how impressed I was with him. I mean, because he coached in the NFL a couple of years, so, and he played in the NFL. He was on that Jets team that beat the Colts in 69. So, I mean, that's the thing that's the beauty of working in athletics, is the people that you meet and those paths that cross. For example, Billy was saying, if they had allowed amateurs, if they had allowed professionals to compete in the Olympics like they do now, see, he would have been on the same U.S. Olympic team with Bob Hayes. See, because in 1963, and he was at Villanova, he won the silver medal in the Pan American Games in the shot put. So the next year, he'd have been on the American team throwing the shot put while Bob Hayes was running sprints. Can you imagine what that, if we had had that kind of confluence to be able to say these guys were on the same team, same Olympic team, and now, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's, like I said, that's the beauty of, you know, life really, but especially athletics. You know, the people that you run into, you find out how small the world it really is.
Right.
Awesome.
Final thought for me before we get ready to wrap up this first of many segments. I'm telling you now, first of many conversations that we're going to have with Alvin Hollins. I mean, because we got stories for days. And I think it's important that many folks, you know, understand and hear and appreciate some of the history of Florida A&M athletics. I mean, there's stuff that I'm constantly learning or being remembered. And, you know, look, I like to say, you know, with Kelvin and Kofi, I'm just a kid from the Midwest that found FAMU thanks to the Circle City Classic. You know, these guys were in Tallahassee. They grew up as Rattlers. So, you know, I learned something new almost every conversation. But I'll never forget being a undergrad and the first time coming into Alvin's office and just almost like I had built up this appreciation of newspapers and media and just stats and just the whole sports information, sports journalism thing. So coming into Alvin's office and just seeing just piles of just papers and magazines and just there was stuff everywhere, man. You had file cabinets and things were piled up everywhere. It was
cabinets, yeah.
Hey, look, I'm telling you, it was intimidating. The first time going in there, I'm looking around like, I didn't even know what to ask. I think I may have asked like one dumb question and went out of there like, this man has too much information. I don't know what to ask him. I don't even know how to help. You know, I just want to kind of do something. And so I think that's when I kind of, I don't know, either I found my way over across the hall to Dexter or something because he didn't have maybe as much stuff piled up in the corners like Alvin's office did. I don't know. But anyway, it was just a pleasure getting to see you and your work. And I will always say this, Alvin, nobody put together preseason packets the way you did. I mean, your level of professionalism and the first class nature of the stuff that you put together, it still to this day. I mean, look, I was at Media Day, and so I can't help but see a lot of the stuff at Media Day from the SWAC teams. And I see stuff and I'm just like, I just feel like there's an influence of like a touch of Alvin Hollins in some of the stuff that I see from some of the different media folks and just the stuff that's in these magazines. Because we always talk about information. It's like, I want to be able to get information about FAMU like someone can get information about Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State. And I always felt that you could get information about every detail of Florida A&M, the program, the history, the coaches, the players, just like you would at any other school. And that's what you brought. And so it was always kind of funny when you get to other schools and you see what they put together and you're like, oh, this is all you got? Oh, okay. Where's the where's the section about the assistant coaches and the players? What about the history of the school? And I'm just like, y'all where's your record book? You know, and it's just like everybody just doesn't have Alvin Hollins is what they would say. And I'm one guy. I'm not Alvin Hollins. Oh, okay. I understand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that was something that that was a template. And I talked about Roosevelt Wilson, Eddie Jackson before him. We had some people in this office prior to me coming there that really kind of set the pace, you know, for what was expected. And I know Roosevelt Wilson in particular, you know, his thing was he said, Alvin, he said, I want, if a reporter comes to Tallahassee to brag, I want them to be able to get the same quality of information and service that they would get if they were across the street. Now, they're not going to get the pregame meal and the crack crab and all that kind of stuff, but the basics, they need to be able to get that roster, statistics, you know, play-by-play, all of that. So, I mean, the standards were kind of laid out for me before I got there. And, you know, and that was something that, you know, you took pride in. And when you come to a place like Florida A&M, you get a chance to meet Jake Gaither, not just, I mean, you get a chance to meet Jake Gaither and Bob Hayes, Andre Dawson. You get a chance to meet these living legends. So you know that you're in a place where, you know, you got to bring, you like Michael Jordan said, I got to take my game to another level, and you do, you know, and that's what you strive to do, because, you know, those athletes and coaches and the program, they deserve the best. And, you know, so the fun really was just trying to push that envelope and see how much more we could put into it. So, and the guides, especially the football guides, those were the things that I took a lot of pride in those, because, you know, we were always looking at what Florida State, Florida, and what they did, the content. And that's what you wanted to do, was when we would go down to Florida, to Orlando, usually Orlando, there was a big meeting with all the sports writers and sportscasters in the state in August. Usually they met with the coaches. So I said, I wanted my media guide from Florida A&M to compare to those other guys. So that's what you started building towards. So, and after a while in the MEAC, they go, man, your stuff you're killing us, man. I said, no, you know, this is where we have to be if we're going to get recognition. And I think that was the key to us being ranked and everything else as far as a conference, not just FAMU. You know, we stepped up our game as SIDs, and we were able to get our ADs to give us a little help, and that was it, you know. But, you know, that media guide it really became a big deal for recruiting. The coaches, we printed more books. We may have printed 2,000 guides, and we gave half of them to the coaches to send out. Shoot, and bad thing is, I ended up running out at the end of the season and have to sneak in their closet and try to get some for postseason games and stuff, because they still had a bunch left for recruiting, but they used it to send out to recruits. So you understood how the stuff needed to be presented to appeal to kids and to alumni. So.
All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for this edition of the O&G Strike Zone. Of course, as I promised, this is just the first of many conversations with Alvin. You know, let us know if you have any, you know, questions that you want us to ask Alvin. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram. That's at O&G Strike Zone. Hit us up. Let us know, and when we have our second session, our second conversation with Alvin, we'll get a chance to maybe throw out some questions, any historical questions that you might have, and I'm sure we're gonna work in some things as the season gets going. We're gonna come up with some maybe we'll have Alvin help us with some trivia things as we get a chance to maybe have some contests and give away some prizes. You know, we're gonna have to try to do some things. Maybe I don't know. What do you think, Kelvin? Maybe like a stump Alvin kind of thing. You know, can you come up with something where you can stump Alvin Hollins? You know, with a history or a trivia question.
Like it.
Yeah. So we'll have to spitball somebody. You up for that, Alvin?
I'm up for it all the way, baby. So just, as they say, bring it on. Let's see what happens, man. I don't know everything, but I know a lot.
There it is. Best of 5. Let's see who can get best of 5. Can you stump Alvin best of 5? You know, or something like that. So there it is. So again, Alvin, we appreciate you taking time with us, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again down the road. All right.
Well, I enjoyed it, man, and I'm looking forward to more opportunities to chew the fat with you guys.
All right, sounds good. For Kofi Hemingway, Kelvin Rozier, and of course, the MEAC and FAMU Hall of Famer, Alvin Hollins, I'm Bryan Fulford. Thanks for watching the O&G Strike Zone, and stay tuned for another episode coming up. Peace out.